My name is Ava Miller, and at 24, I never expected my college graduation day would become the sweetest revenge. Standing beside my sister Chloe, our matching caps and gowns should have been simply joyful. But years of unfair treatment had built up to this moment. I still hear their cold words echoing. She deserved it, but you didn't. The memory of that night, when my parents decided only my sister was worth investing in, still stings. Before I reveal what made my parents' faces turn ghostly pale at our graduation, let me paint the picture of how we got there. I grew up in a seemingly normal middle-class family in suburban North Carolina. Our two-story house with the white picket fence looked perfect from the outside, complete with family photos displaying forced smiles that hid the complicated reality within. My parents, Richard and Sharon Miller, worked stable jobs, Dad as an accountant and Mom as a high school English teacher. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable enough that financial struggles weren't supposed to be in my future. My sister Chloe was 2 years younger than me, but somehow always seemed miles ahead in our parents' eyes. With her perfect blonde curls, effortless academic achievements, and natural charm, she embodied everything they valued. From early childhood, the pattern was clear. Chloe was the golden child, and I was the afterthought. I can still picture Christmas mornings where Chloe would unwrap the latest expensive dolls and electronics, while I received practical items like socks or discount store craft kits. Your sister needs more encouragement with her talents, Mom would explain when I questioned the disparity. Even at 8 years old, I recognized the unfairness, but learned to swallow my disappointment. School events highlighted the difference in their support. For Chloe's science fairs, both parents would take the day off work, helping her create elaborate displays. For my art exhibitions, I was lucky if Mom showed up for 15 minutes during her lunch break. Art is just a hobby, Ava. It won't get you anywhere in life, Dad would say dismissively. The only person who seemed to see me was my grandmother, Rose. During our summer visits to her lake house, she would sit with me for hours while I sketched the water and the trees. You have a special way of seeing the world, Ava, she would tell me. Don't let anyone dim your light. Those summers with Grandma Rose became my sanctuary. In her small library, I discovered books about successful entrepreneurs and business leaders who had overcome obstacles. I began to develop dreams beyond just surviving my childhood, dreams of proving my worth through achievements my parents couldn't ignore. By high school, I had developed a resilient personality out of necessity. I joined every business-related club and excelled in math and economics, discovering a natural aptitude that surprised even my most supportive teachers. When I won the regional business plan competition as a sophomore, my economics teacher, Mr. Harrison, called my parents personally to tell them how exceptional my work was. "That's nice," Mom said after hanging up the phone. "Did you remember to help Chloe with her history project? She has that big presentation tomorrow." During junior year, I worked after school at a local coffee shop to save money. Sensing I would need my own resources in the future, I managed to maintain a 4 GPA despite working 20 hours a week. Meanwhile, Chloe joined the debate team and instantly became the star, with my parents attending every tournament and celebrating each victory with special dinners. By senior year, both Chloe and I were applying to colleges. Despite being 2 years apart, Chloe had skipped a grade, putting us in the same graduating class. We both applied to the prestigious Northwood University, known for its excellent business and political science programs. Against all odds, we both got acceptance letters on the same day. I still remember the excitement I felt, hands trembling as I opened that thick envelope. I got in, I announced at dinner, unable to contain my joy. Full acceptance to the business program. My father glanced up briefly from his phone. "That's nice, Ava." Minutes later, Chloe burst through the front door, waving her own acceptance letter. "I got into Northwood's political science program," she shrieked. The transformation in my parents was immediate. Dad jumped up from his chair. Mom rushed to embrace Chloe, and suddenly dinner was abandoned for an impromptu celebration complete with champagne for the adults and sparkling cider for us. "We always knew you could do it," Mom gushed to Chloe, seemingly forgetting I had announced the exact same achievement minutes earlier. 2 weeks later came the conversation that would change everything. We were having a family dinner, a rare occasion where everyone was present and phones were temporarily set aside. "We need to discuss college plans," Dad announced, folding his hands on the table. His eyes, however, were fixed solely on Chloe. "We've been saving for your education since you were born." The Northwood tuition is steep, but we can cover it entirely, so you can focus on your studies without worrying about money." Chloe beamed with pride while I waited for my turn, assuming they had saved for both of us. The silence stretched uncomfortably until I finally spoke up. "What about my tuition?" I asked quietly. The room temperature seemed to drop several degrees as my parents exchanged uncomfortable glances. "Ava," my father said slowly, "we only have enough for one of you, and Chloe has always shown more academic promise. We believe investing in her education will yield better returns." My mother reached across to pat my hand in what she probably thought was a comforting gesture. "You've always been more independent anyway. You can take out loans or maybe consider community college first." The words that followed burned themselves into my memory. "She deserved it, but you didn't." I stared at them, unable to process the depth of their betrayal. Years of smaller rejections had somehow not prepared me for this ultimate dismissal of my worth. In that moment, the thin threads holding our family together, in my mind, snapped completely. That night after the devastating dinner announcement, I locked myself in my bedroom and allowed the tears I'd been holding back to finally fall. The unfairness crushed me. 17 years of trying to earn my parents' approval, culminating in this ultimate rejection. My 4 GPA, business competition wins, and acceptance to a prestigious university meant nothing to them. I had never been enough, and apparently I never would be. The next morning, puffy-eyed and exhausted, I confronted my parents in the kitchen before school. "How could you have saved college money for Chloe but not for me?" I asked, my voice breaking despite my attempts to stay composed. Mom sighed as she stirred her coffee. "Ava, it's not that simple. We had to make practical decisions with our limited resources, but I have better grades than Chloe," I countered. "I've been working part-time for 2 years while maintaining perfect academics." "How is that not showing dedication?" Dad closed his newspaper with a sharp snap. "Your sister has always been dedicated to academics. You've been too distracted with other activities and that job of yours. Besides, Chloe has a clear career path. Your business ideas are risky at best. You never even asked about my plans," I whispered. "Look," Mom interjected, "we can help you fill out loan applications. Plenty of students finance their own education." The conversation ended there because they had already made their decision. In their minds, I was less deserving, less promising, and therefore less worthy of their investment. That weekend, I drove to my grandmother's house 2 hours away, seeking the only genuine support I knew. As I poured out the whole story, Grandma Rose listened without interruption, her weathered hands clasping mine tightly. "My darling girl," she finally said, wiping away my tears. "Sometimes life's most painful moments become our greatest catalyst. Your parents are wrong about you. Deeply, tragically wrong. But you have something they can't recognize: unbreakable determination." Grandma couldn't offer financial help. Her fixed income barely covered her own expenses. But she gave me something more valuable: unwavering belief in my potential. "Promise me you'll go to Northwood anyway," she said fiercely. "Don't let their limitations become yours." That night I made my decision. I would attend Northwood alongside Chloe, finance my own education, and graduate despite every obstacle. The next morning I began researching scholarships, grants, work-study programs, and student loans. For weeks, I spent every spare moment completing applications. My guidance counselor, Ms. Albright, stayed after school to help me navigate the complex financial aid system. "I've rarely seen a student as determined as you," she told me as we submitted my 25th scholarship application. I received several small scholarships, but not enough to cover the substantial Northwood tuition. With a mix of federal loans and private loans co-signed by Grandma Rose, I pieced together enough financing for my first year. Next came housing. While Chloe would live in the expensive on-campus dormitories paid for by our parents, I found a tiny apartment 45 minutes from campus with 3 roommates I met through a university housing forum. Meanwhile, I applied for every job near campus. 2 weeks before move-in day, I secured a position at a busy coffee shop within walking distance of my classes, plus weekend shifts at a local bookstore. The contrast between our preparations was stark. My parents took Chloe shopping for new clothes, a laptop, and dorm decorations. They helped her pack, arranged for professional movers, and planned an elaborate send-off party with family friends. I packed my belongings in second-hand suitcases and boxes scavenged from grocery stores. The night before I left, Mom awkwardly offered me some of her old twin sheets for my new bed. It was the only acknowledgement that I, too, was starting college. On move-in day, my parents drove Chloe to campus in our family SUV packed with her belongings. I followed behind in my decade-old Honda that frequently needed coolant and made concerning noises when I braked. No one had offered to check it before my 2-hour drive to my new life. As we parted ways at the campus entrance, my parents and Chloe heading to her premium dorm, me continuing alone to my distant apartment, Mom called out, "Good luck, Ava. I hope this all works out for you." The doubt in her voice only strengthened my resolve. This wouldn't just work out. I would make it triumphant. My new apartment was a shock. Peeling paint, unreliable plumbing, and roommates who were strangers. That first night, alone on my thin mattress with the sounds of traffic and neighbors arguing filtering through the walls, exhaustion overtook me. The enormity of what I was undertaking hit full force, and doubts crept in. Could I really work 30 hours weekly while taking a full course load? Would the constant financial stress crush my academic performance? Just as despair threatened to overwhelm me, my phone chimed with a text from Grandma Rose. "Remember, my brave girl. Diamonds are only made under pressure. You're already shining." With those words in mind, I dried my tears and created a meticulous schedule, mapping out every hour of my upcoming weeks. Sleep would be limited, social life nearly non-existent, but my education and future would not be sacrificed. Freshman year hit me like a hurricane. While most students were adjusting to college academics and enjoying newfound freedom, I was balancing 30 work hours weekly with a full course load of business classes. My typical day started at 5:00 a.m. with a 2-hour study session before rushing to my opening shift at the coffee shop. After classes, I'd head straight to my second job at the bookstore, often not returning to my apartment until after midnight. Sleep became a luxury I could rarely afford. The contrast between my life and Chloe's couldn't have been more stark. Through occasional text messages and social media posts, I glimpsed her carefree college experience. Sorority events, study abroad information sessions, and weekends visiting home for Mom's cooking. Meanwhile, I was calculating if I could afford both textbooks and groceries that month. Despite the grueling schedule, something unexpected happened. My business classes weren't just manageable. I was excelling. Years of practical financial planning and work experience had prepared me in ways my classmates weren't. While they struggled with basic accounting concepts, I was applying these principles in real time to my own complex financial situation. Professor Grant, my business ethics instructor, stopped me after class one day. "Ms. Miller, your analysis of the case study was exceptional, particularly your perspectives on resource allocation. Your insights show remarkable maturity. For perhaps the first time, my struggles were translating into an academic advantage. During this time, I was also blessed with an unexpected friendship. My roommate Maya noticed my punishing schedule and began leaving homemade meals in the refrigerator with my name on them. One night when I came home particularly exhausted, she was waiting up. "You can't keep going like this," she said bluntly, setting a cup of tea before me. "You'll burn out before midterms." When I explained my situation, her expression shifted from concern to indignation on my behalf. "That's beyond unfair," she declared. "From now on, consider me your college family." Maya became my sanctuary in the storm. She edited my papers, created flashcards for my exams, and fiercely defended my study time from other roommates' interruptions. When she discovered I was skipping meals to save money, she insisted on cooking enough for both of us. "My parents taught me that family takes care of each other," she explained simply. "And sometimes the family we choose matters more than the one we're born into." Midway through sophomore year, disaster struck. The coffee shop reduced everyone's hours, cutting my income by nearly 40%. My careful budget collapsed overnight. Panicked, I remembered Ms. Davenport from financial aid and made an emergency appointment. After reviewing my situation, she offered both practical advice and unexpected assistance. "Your academic performance qualifies you for an emergency grant," she explained. "And Professor Grant has recommended you for a research assistant position in the business department. It pays better than the coffee shop and looks more impressive on a resume." The research position became another turning point. Working directly with Professor Grant, I began assisting with her study on small business resilience. The flexible hours and intellectual stimulation were a welcome change from preparing lattes. More importantly, Professor Grant took a genuine interest in my future. "Have you considered entrepreneurship?" She asked one afternoon. Your perspective on resource constraint driving innovation is quite sophisticated. The seed of an idea that had been germinating since high school began to take root. Using skills from my marketing and digital media classes, I created a simple online platform offering virtual assistant services to local small businesses. By the beginning of junior year, my small business was generating enough income to allow me to quit the bookstore job. As my business grew, so did my confidence. In business strategy class, I began speaking up more, sharing insights from my real-world entrepreneurial experience. Professors took notice, and classmates began seeking my advice. The girl who once felt invisible was becoming a respected voice in the department. Meanwhile, Chloe and I maintained a cordial but distant relationship. Our parents called her weekly but reached out to me only for major holidays. During one Thanksgiving break when I couldn't afford the trip home, Mom texted, "We miss you at dinner, but we understand you're busy with your projects." The text spoke volumes about how they viewed my choices. Despite their continued dismissal, my academic performance was becoming impossible to ignore. I made the dean's list every semester, received departmental awards, and was invited to present at a regional business conference. By the end of junior year, my virtual assistant business had evolved into a proper digital marketing agency, serving clients across the state. The business not only covered my living expenses, but generated enough profit to start repaying some of my smaller loans early. Professor Grant nominated me for the prestigious Entrepreneurial Excellence Scholarship, which covered my entire senior year tuition. "You've earned this through extraordinary effort," she told me. For the first time since starting college, I felt the crushing weight of financial insecurity begin to lift. What I didn't realize was that my success story was becoming quietly famous within the business department, and seeds were being planted that would bloom in a most unexpected way at graduation. Senior year arrived with a momentum I could scarcely have imagined. My digital marketing agency had grown to serve 15 regular clients and employed 4 part-time student workers. Meanwhile, my academic performance had positioned me among the top students in the business school. Professor Grant approached me in October. "The National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition is accepting entries," she said. "I think your agency model has a genuine shot." With her mentorship, I spent weeks refining my business plan. I made it to the final round, scheduled for just 1 month before graduation. Ironically, as my professional trajectory soared, Chloe began experiencing her first real academic struggles. Years of coasting on natural talent had left her ill-prepared for her demanding senior thesis. One evening, I received an unexpected knock on my apartment door. It was a teary-eyed Chloe. "I'm failing my thesis seminar," she confessed. "Professor Goldstein says my research methodology is fundamentally flawed, and I have 3 weeks to completely restructure everything or I might not graduate." Looking at my sister's genuine distress, I felt conflicting emotions. Part of me, the hurt, resentful part, thought this was karmic justice, but another part recognized this as an opportunity to rise above the pain of our past. "Come in," I said, stepping aside. "Let's take a look." That night became the first of many study sessions. As we worked together, something unexpected happened. We began to talk, really talk, for perhaps the first time in our lives. "How do you do it all?" Chloe asked one night. "Your business, perfect grades, research position." "I can barely manage my coursework." I explained my punishing schedule, the financial pressures, the constant calculations. Chloe listened with growing horror. "I had no idea," she whispered. "Mom and Dad always just said you were doing fine." "Fine is relative," I replied. "I've worked 60-hour weeks for 4 years. I've gone without meals, proper sleep, and any semblance of a social life. But why didn't you ever say anything?" she asked. The question struck me as naively privileged. Would it have changed anything? Would Mom and Dad suddenly have decided I was worth investing in, too? The conversation marked a turning point. As Chloe began to recognize the inequality that had shaped our lives, she became my unexpected ally. By January, her thesis was back on track, and she had developed a new appreciation for the discipline she'd always lacked. Meanwhile, Dean Caldwell, head of the business school, invited me to her office. "Your journey at Northwood has been extraordinary," she began. "From financing your own education to building a successful business while maintaining academic excellence. We would like you to consider representing the business school as a speaker at graduation." The opportunity to publicly claim my achievements before my parents and the entire university community felt like the culmination of everything. I accepted immediately. What I didn't know was that Dean Caldwell had more planned than just a student address. As April approached, I won the national business competition, securing $50,000 in funding and national exposure. The university newspaper ran a front-page story. I sent a copy to Grandma Rose, who called me sobbing with pride. My parents notably did not mention the article or the award. 2 weeks before graduation, our parents arrived in town to help Chloe prepare. They rented a large house for the extended family and planned an elaborate party. I received a perfunctory invitation. "We assumed you'd be busy with work," Mom explained, "but you're welcome to join if you can make it." The dismissal stung, but less sharply than it once would have. My worth was no longer tied to their recognition. The day before graduation, Grandma Rose arrived with a special gift. A custom graduation stole embroidered with the words that had sustained me. "Diamonds are made under pressure." "Wear this proudly," she said, eyes shining. "You've earned every thread." The morning of graduation dawned bright and clear. I met Chloe at the robing area. "So proud to be walking with you today," she texted. The simple message reflected how far our relationship had evolved. "Can you believe we made it?" she asked as we lined up, her humility still new enough to surprise me. "We both made it our own way," I replied. As we marched down the center aisle of the auditorium, I scanned the family section and spotted my parents in premium seats near the front. Their eyes tracked Chloe with obvious pride. Grandma Rose sat beside them, her gaze fixed firmly on me. When our eyes met, she nodded once, a gesture containing all her fierce pride and love. After the conferring of degrees, University President Thompson approached the podium. "Before we conclude, we have several special recognitions. First, I invite Ava Miller of the School of Business to deliver this year's student address." As I made my way to the stage, I caught a glimpse of my parents. For the first time that day, they were looking directly at me, confusion evident in their expressions. Taking the podium, I drew a deep breath and began. 4 years ago, I arrived at Northwood with nothing but determination and the belief that education should be earned, not given. Today, I stand before you having worked 30 hours weekly while maintaining a full course load, building a successful business that employs fellow students, and graduating with highest honors. I spoke about resilience, about finding strength in adversity, and about redefining success on your own terms. The greatest gift of my Northwood education, I concluded, was discovering that limitations placed upon us by others need not become our own limitations. As I finished to enthusiastic applause, President Thompson returned to the microphone. "Thank you, Ms. Miller, for those inspiring words. And now, I have the distinct pleasure of announcing several special recognitions." He paused dramatically. "First, the faculty of the School of Business has unanimously selected Ava Miller as this year's valedictorian, graduating with a perfect 4 GPA while simultaneously building a business now valued at over 6 figures. A murmur of appreciation rippled through the crowd. I stood frozen beside the podium. Additionally, the president continued, "Ms. Miller is this year's winner of the National Collegiate Business Innovation Competition, bringing unprecedented recognition to our university's entrepreneurship program." The audience's applause grew stronger. I dared a glance toward my parents and saw their expressions shifting from confusion to shock. "What many of you may not know," President Thompson went on, his voice carrying clearly through the silent auditorium, "is that Ms. Miller accomplished these extraordinary achievements while fully self-financing her education, working multiple jobs, building her business, and maintaining academic excellence without any family financial support." The revelation sent a visible ripple through the audience. In recognition of her extraordinary journey, I am pleased to announce that Ms. Miller has been offered a position with Vance Global Consulting, one of the nation's premier business strategy firms. Furthermore, her entrepreneurial journey will be featured in next month's edition of Business Innovation magazine as their cover story on rising entrepreneurial talent. The audience erupted in a standing ovation. Through the thunderous applause, I watched as my parents' faces drained of color, their expressions morphing from shock to something approaching horror as they realized everyone now knew they had refused to support the daughter being celebrated as the university's most outstanding graduate. Chloe stood among the graduates, clapping wildly with tears streaming down her face. As the applause finally quieted, President Thompson made one final announcement. In honor of Ms. Miller's extraordinary example, the University Board has established the Ava Miller Resilience Scholarship, providing financial assistance to students demonstrating exceptional determination in overcoming obstacles to their education. The symbolic victory was complete. As I returned to my seat, Chloe grabbed my hand and squeezed it tightly. "You are amazing," she whispered fiercely. "And they were so wrong about you." When the ceremony concluded, I saw my parents standing awkwardly with Grandma Rose. When I finally reached them, my father attempted a jovial tone that rang hollowly. "Well, this was quite a surprise," he said, his smile not reaching his eyes. "You've been holding out on us, Ava." The casual dismissal of all my hard work as if I'd merely been keeping secrets might once have devastated me. Now it barely registered. "Not at all," I replied coolly. "I've been exactly who I've always been." "You just weren't paying attention." Before they could respond, Chloe stepped forward, putting her arm around my shoulders in a clear display of solidarity. "Isn't it amazing how she managed to achieve all this without any support?" she announced loudly enough for nearby families to hear. "I can't imagine how much more she could have done if she'd had the same advantages I did." Our mother flinched visibly. "Perhaps we should continue this conversation at home," Dad suggested tersely. "Actually," I replied, "I have a celebration with my business team and mentors this afternoon. They've been my real support system these past 4 years, and I wouldn't miss it for anything." Grandma Rose stepped forward then, taking my hand. "I'm coming with you," she declared. "I want to meet these wonderful people who recognized what your own parents couldn't see." The blunt statement hung in the air. For perhaps the first time, I saw genuine regret flash across my mother's face. "We're very proud of you, of course," she attempted weakly. "Thank you," I replied with dignified grace. "But I've learned that external validation isn't necessary for success. Today isn't about gaining your approval. It's about celebrating the journey I made without it." As Grandma rose and I turned to leave, Chloe made a quick decision. "I'm coming too," she announced, stepping away from our parents to join us. The sight of their 2 daughters walking away, both having outgrown the constraints of their expectations, left my parents standing alone amidst the celebrating families, their carefully constructed narratives about their children visibly crumbling before the undeniable truth. Later, at the family dinner they insisted on having, the atmosphere was thick with tension. Relatives, now aware of the full story, peppered my parents with pointed questions. "Why didn't you tell us about this big consulting job?" my father asked, trying to regain control. Before I could respond, Uncle David interjected. "Probably because you haven't asked about her plans once in the past 4 years, Richard," he said bluntly. "We had limited resources and had to make difficult choices," my mother said weakly. "Independent by necessity, not by choice," Grandma Rose corrected sharply. "Let's not rewrite history now that her success has become inconvenient to your narrative." The dinner proceeded with my relatives focusing their attention on me, asking about my business and future plans. My parents' discomfort grew with each accomplishment they learned of. As the evening concluded, my father attempted a final, conciliatory gesture. "Emma, your mother and we'd like to help you with the security deposit on an apartment near your new job." The offer, so small compared to 4 years of tuition, felt almost offensive in its inadequacy. "Thank you, but that won't be necessary," I replied evenly. "My starting salary at Vance Global will be $90,000 annually, plus performance bonuses. My housing is quite secure." The figure, substantially more than my father currently earned, landed like a physical blow. His expression cycled through shock, disbelief, and finally, a grudging recognition. "Well," he said, struggling for composure, "you've certainly proven yourself capable." "Yes," I agreed simply. "I have." As we prepared to leave, I felt centuries of weight lifting from my shoulders. Their approval, so desperately sought, had become irrelevant in the face of my own verified worth. The family I was choosing, Grandma Rose, Chloe, Maya, my mentors, was the one that had seen my value all along. The real victory wasn't proving my parents wrong. It was discovering that their assessment had never actually defined me. I had always been capable, valuable, and worthy of investment. Their failure to see it reflected their limitations, not mine. In the end, being underestimated became my greatest advantage. It forced me to develop a resilience and determination that would serve me long after the initial injury had healed, building a foundation for a success they couldn't have envisioned, not because I wasn't capable, but because their vision was too limited to encompass who I could become.